And it wasn't until like 2 months later I had this oh my God moment. I sat up in my bed in the middle of the night and I was like, oh my God, I was raped.
Then I realized, oh my gosh, like I had something done to me. I cannot believe that actually happened to me of all people.
He got to just live life as normal and keep making money for the company. And now I'm jobless.
I think the Me Too movement definitely has been a really big factor in a lot of, women and just people in general just sharing their stories. The fact that it has become just national and global, I think that has given people just courage to say, okay, I'm not alone. This happened to me too. Let me share so I can empower other people to share. There's a lot of different emotions and feelings that come with it. Mm-hmm. Shame, guilt, and all that. And you just feel like nobody else will understand. Nobody else will know. But when other people hear other women's stories, it just makes it that much easier.
And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my parents. Because I felt, I don't want to say I was embarrassed. I felt embarrassed. Because the way that I see it now, like, I can't be embarrassed of myself for something that I didn't ask to happen.
Shame, guilt, if somebody were to share their story, you could have somebody else that would judge and say, oh, well, you asked for it, or, oh, like what you were wearing, like totally provoked that other person.
But for me, for people who are in my situation, I really would say, obviously, like, you have to listen to your gut, and if something doesn't sit right with you, you can't let another person who doesn't know what you're going through tell you that you're overreacting or that it's not something that you should be concerned about, because if you are concerned, you're concerned, and all your feelings are valid.
I was on family vacation. It was like a family reunion kind of family vacation. I met this guy. He was a little bit older than me. I was going to be a freshman in high school and he was going to be a senior. So we kind of hung out all week, and so I guess I got to know him a little bit. He like hung around my family, hung around with my brother and I, my cousins. We're all kind of around the same age. And so I think it was his last night and my second to last night. And he was texting me, asking me to come meet him out, but everybody in my house was already asleep. And granted, so I was 14 at the time. So if I would have asked my parents to leave the house at 12 o'clock to go meet up with a boy, obviously they would have said no. So I snuck out and I walked down to his house, and we were hanging out for maybe like a minute or two, and he decides to take me around so in the beach houses, they have outdoor showers, and kind of like pushes me into the shower and forces me to have sex with him. And like while it's happening, he's like covering my mouth so I can't say anything, I can't scream. And then afterwards, I'm like putting my clothes back on, and he told me, he was like, if you tell anybody or tell your family, I'll kill you. And I don't think it was until I got to college that I was finally like, I gotta let that part of my life not let me be a product of my own environment.
So basically, I started at this smaller company about beginning of August, and it's like a male-dominated company, so there's only 5 women in the office, and like guys in the office were always kind of, like I would get glares and like glances sometimes, and I always tried to kind of be like, oh, whatever, because it's something that as a woman it's so sad, but we're just so used to, and like, oh yeah, it's just a guy, like he just whatever, like brush it off. And then there was one guy that I worked with who is much older than me, so he's 40, and so I always had a goofy relationship with him because that's just my personality, is like joking around, and he always joked back, and it was never inappropriate, like nothing that was ever like sexual or, that crossed that line. And so one day I was at work since I was office manager, I was the front, like the receptionist kind of, and then they were all in a separate office. So when I went back there to ask someone in there a question, he was staring at me from across the room and just like kind of looking at me up and down. And it was just like, I was like, oh, that was kind of like, that left me with just like a really bad feeling. And then when I got back to my desk, I get a message on my Slack saying that I like should come into the sales room again and give him a foot massage, and like he added in like ... like insinuating it's more like sexual. And then I said like in capital letters like ick, like that's gross. He was like, come on, like my feet are like beautiful, and was like, how about you give me a back rub then? And I was like, no, thank you. Like, why don't you ask someone else in the office? And then he said, and I like was like, why don't you ask one of like, there's a new guy in the office, and like ask him to do it for you. And he's like, not my type. Like, I want to be relaxed and not stressed out. Like insinuating I'm his type and like just being so creepy. And then I kept saying no, and then he said, how about 4:30? Like, you can come in here and rub my feet. And so finally, I was like, okay, no. And then I think for him it was really like a power move on me, because I was the youngest person in the office, and I was a woman, so it really just was like, I'm such an easy target. And so I went straight to HR, and I worked just under HR, so I was her basically assistant. And I sent her direct screenshots of what he said to me, and her response was, this is over text as well, and I guess I should have given her more like context, but I think if you read that conversation, you think that's really creepy. She goes, ha 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 ha, like, it's fine, like, he's not creepy and his fiance is really hot, so it doesn't matter. So I was like, okay, and then I'm very passive, so I was like, okay, I guess she's right, like, doubting myself. And then I was like, you know what, like, no, this doesn't sit well with me. And then that night, basically, I was like, I already don't like this company, and then this guy did that, so I was like, I don't tolerate that, because I have had, like, a sexual assault in the past. And so I was like, this is not something that I take lightly. And basically I called her the next day that I didn't go into work, and she said, my HR person said to me, basically just like asked me to resign because he makes a lot of money for the company. So he is a top salesperson. So she's like, well, what do you want me to do about this? Like, what do you want me to do in the situation? And I'm like, well, that's really up to you. You're the HR person. And then she was like, so I guess you're resigning then, right? And I'm like, I guess I am. So, and then he messaged me on LinkedIn after this happened, and he had no idea that it was because of him. But he like, dude, this sucks. We're all gonna miss you. So basically, like, she sent out an email to the company saying, like, I'm excited to leave, whatever, ask me if you have any questions. And so he had, like, no repercussions whatsoever. Like I said earlier, like, I had an instance with a sexual assault from someone I went to high school with, and then, like, I never spoke up about what he did to me because I didn't want my, like, whole hometown to find out. So then I didn't want to let this slide as well. So I was like, this is not something that I take lightly, and it just really triggered, like, this whole backlash of, like, what happened with him, and then it all was, like, I'm like, I can't go back to that company.
So this was back when I was in Vermont. I think it was 2010, the summer of 2010. I was sleeping. I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time. So I was sleeping, and she was, I think, out in the living room, probably drinking or something like that. And so she comes into bed, and the next thing I know, I feel fingers going up my vagina. And I am just almost floored and shocked, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go with it? Am I supposed to say stop? And I remembered the last time I told her to stop her. I told her I was sleeping because she had wanted to have sex with me before then. And I said, I'm tired, I'm sleeping. She got really upset. And she was drunk. And that was just really awful. And eventually I just gave in. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to appease you. And so when this happened, I froze. And I was just like, if I say no, she is going to get upset. And I just went along with it. And I hadn't told anybody probably since last year when I went to therapy. And that was pretty rough. If I don't want it and if I can't give it, there is no sense of doing that. There is no sense of, making you do something that you don't want to do. Your body's yours. It doesn't belong to anybody else, whether you're married, whether you're not married, or anything like that. It's yours, and you have every single right to do what you want and do what's right for you.
The two biggest things are, one, people not believing them, and then two, making excuses for why it happened.
People not believing it. If you have somebody that was violated by this other person who, society or your friends or whatever think is a really good person, I think I can see why somebody would be afraid to say, oh, this person did that to me, because they would probably be afraid of maybe how that specific person would react, how their friends would react, maybe not believing them because, on the outside or in a certain situation or state, like they are a very different person. I mean, there's so many things.
It's easier to come up with a simple explanation for it than why someone would be so evil to do something like that.
And this time I finally came forward because seeing all these other women come forward has made me realize what is and isn't okay, and that we shouldn't have to tolerate this.
It is okay to be open and vulnerable. And because you've had something happen to you, that doesn't mean that you're any less of a person. That doesn't mean that you're a slut or anything like that at all. That's the best advice that I could give.